welcome everyone to this King's Clinical Academic Training Office, co-hosted with the Centre for Translational Medicine Summer Short. And we've got a really exciting topic today in the introduction to cultural competency in health research. Really important and really exciting as well. And it's great to have Dr. Edward Ademolu, who is a lecturer in cultural competency here at King's College London, taking us through. Before we get to that exciting stuff, hopefully I can, yep. For those of you who don't know, the King's Clinical Academic Training Office, or KCATO, as it's a bit easily known as, supports all our clinical academics, no matter what type of health professional you are, across King's College London and our partner NHS Trust. So do check out their SharePoint website, sign up for the newsletter. And the Centre for Translational Medicine is also a cross-KHP entity, supporting translational research across a number of disease areas with a focus on improving health equity. So we're increasing the number of trained researchers and also looking to ensure our translational research infrastructure is integrated across King's Health Partners. We have a number of funding calls, which will be launching in October, so do keep an eye out for those. A number of them are aimed at our healthcare professionals. And also we have a pre-application patient and public involvement fund for translational research. In this session today, we want to create a safe space, so do questions can either go into the chat or pop your hand up at the end. Just remember, be curious, be compassionate, especially today we're talking about what can sometimes be a sensitive subject. Be present, so make sure that you're focusing on this quick half hour and just be you. And I think with that, I will pass over to Edward. Take it away.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so as Emily said, my name is Dr. Edward Ademolu. I'm a lecturer in cultural competency education here at King's. And as you know, I'm here to deliver a very, very brief session on how you can incorporate cultural competency as a reflexive and action-orientated lens for you to develop more, not only culturally competent, but ethical and just research projects. So the objective for this afternoon is very simple. I want to introduce you to the concept of cultural competency and its application in health research, but also provide a platform for you to engage with the concept, which is rather elusive to some, through interactive activities and discussions. And lastly, I want to encourage you to reflect on your own research projects and practices and consider how cultural competency can be integrated appropriately. But as a way for us to ease ourselves into this discussion, I want you, in one word or phrase, to put into the chat what comes to mind when you hear the term cultural competency. So I want you to drop your answer in the chat. There's no wrong answers at all. There's something that comes to you instinctively or intuitively. So let's just spend a minute or so just putting something in the chat. Let's see what I have. Okay, I can see fairness, awareness, understanding, being aware of different cultures. Yes. Is here. And understanding of other cultures and inclusive practice, understanding humility. I can see understanding is a main theme here. So I think before taking on this post, my assumptions of cultural competency would have been a set of predefined criteria upon which certain evaluations are made to determine one's proficiency in this elusive thing called culture, right? But now I think my assumptions have been challenged because generally speaking, cultural competency is asking us to really think critically. How can we better understand, appropriately respond to, and learn to relate across cultural differences in a variety of contexts, including the research context, in a way that leads to some sort of meaningful and transformative change. So you're realizing it's from the abstract to some sort of practical, action-orientated change in a context. Okay, but beyond my own understanding of cultural competency, there are some definitions that we call upon. So Cross, who's often cited, says, well, cultural competency is a set of congruent behaviors, attitudes, and policies that come together in a system, agency, or among professionals and enables that system, agency, or those professionals to work effectively in cross-cultural situations. But then Demboa adds something nuance to this and says, well, it's also the ability to honor and respect the beliefs, language, interpersonal styles, and behaviors of individuals. But before we move on to the next slide, either in the chat or just speak out, what do you notice about these definitions of cultural competency? What comes to mind when you see these definitions? Is there anything that's prioritized or emphasized at all? Exactly. Systems, behaviors. Yes. And that's incredibly important because it's actually making me and others realize actually cultural competency is not something that's on the local, micro, interpersonal level, but actually it's about the norms, behaviors, expectations of systems, of agencies, of professional contexts, right? So it's actually multi-layered and hierarchical and systems orientated as well. So why is all this important to research or even health research specifically? You know, regardless of your subject specialism, your disciplinary background, your methodological orientation, or more broadly, your epistemological orientation, which is such a mouthful for me to say, our research occurs in and is in turn constituted by a whole host of social cultural processes and particular cultural contexts, meaning no matter how extra vigilant we think we are, ethically sound, or seemingly objective, if we are more quantitative in our thinking, there is an increasing demand placed upon us to develop a certain critical and reflexive consciousness around and sensitivity towards aspects of culture in our research. That's cultural dynamics, cultural differences, from design all the way to dissemination. And when I say that from design, I mean the start of your research. You thinking about your research questions, your hypotheses and problem statements, thinking about your positionality and identities within the research process and how that influences your approach to research and your encounters with your participants, all the way to dissemination, the end. How am I going to share my research? Via what platforms? With whom? And what are the implications of this, both positive and negative? And this demand to be reflexive about culture in our research is equally placed on those who are qualitatively inclined, so interested in the implicit hows and whys of behavior and phenomena and observation, as it is for those who are more quantitatively inclined, those who are looking to provide numerical, statistical measurements of the world and presented it as if they are authoritative truths, and of course those who are mixed methods as well. So then cultural competency provides some sort of ethical lens and metacognitive skill for you to think about how you can develop more just, ethical, and more sound research projects. So, for some of you here, well, I guess that actually the majority of you here, I sent some preparatory material about the ACT model. So the ACT model is essentially a working prototype that I and my colleague, Dr. Shongyu Lee, the Director of Cultural Competency at King's, are using as a way for us to think about how we can implement cultural competency more practically in our research projects. So we've got this model called the ACT model of culturally competent research. The A standing for activate consciousness, which in the context of research means epistemic reflexivity, which we're going to elaborate on. The C, connect relations, meaning relational ethics and co-production. And then the T, which is transform practices, which in the context of research means structural disruption and justice. So let's briefly go through some of these dimensions of the model. Okay, so epistemic reflexivity, what does that mean? Well, in the context of research, it means critically examining how our own individual beliefs, biases, and experiences, as well as the wider research context, shape the knowledge that we produce, how we actually produce it as well, and the approaches that we use. It's also about promoting transparency and acknowledges the subjective nature of our research. I think it's incredibly important to remember that we are not some sort of autonomous, self-evident, objective beings, neutral beings in the research process that are not affected by the research at all, nor do we affect the research process. That is a fallacy because we are inherently subjective and have so many biases, presuppositions, and influences in the research field. And again, the research field influences us in turn. So, in that context, some guiding prompts for us to really think about is, well, what are some assumptions, experiences, or biases shape how I approach my research? How do my social, cultural, professional identities influence what I prioritize or neglect in identity? So, for example, could it be that your phenomenon of interest, your subject matter, is informed by your professional background, is informed by working with particular communities of interest, or are you part of those communities of interest? And does that prioritize what you're looking for, how you construct your questions, what you deem to be interesting and salient or challenging, for example? The next one is connect relations, which we have called relational ethics and co-production. So this means fostering ethical, equitable, and reciprocal relationships with all participants and stakeholders. It's about sharing power, building trust, and ensuring diverse perspectives are included and respected throughout the research process. And this is particularly interesting and important, actually, if you're working with and about racially minoritized and marginalized communities or communities that you don't even connect to at all. So some prompts to consider is, well, who is most impacted by this research and how are they engaged in shaping it? Is it just policy orientated? Is it just about the organization that you're working for? Was it about the lived experiences of the communities, for example, that you are researching? What are the power imbalances among stakeholders, including the researchers themselves? What does it mean to be a medical professional, an academic, doing this research with particular types of communities? What's the power differences between that? Will that inform the way in which communities engage with you and their willingness to do so? So what mechanisms support mutual trust, respect, and ethical dialogue? But also, how can collaboration across disciplines and professions contribute to more holistic and ethical research outcomes? So it could be, for example, your research is so interdisciplinary, so nuanced that you actually have to outreach and speak to, say, those in sociology or maths or psychology. What mechanisms do you have to ensure that we have many different perspectives to develop a more nuanced and complex understanding of your phenomenon? And lastly, we have transform practices. If you recall at the beginning, I say cultural competency is about making meaningful transformative changes. So this is the action-orientated aspect. So this is structural disruption and justice, which means moving beyond reflexive awareness, so moving beyond epistemic reflexivity to concrete action, actively embedding equity, justice, and inclusion to every stage of the research. This dimension asks us to challenge unjust structures, reimagine methods, and ensure research outcomes benefit those most impacted. And yes, I know it's incredibly important to manage expectations. You're probably thinking, I'm just doing a piece of research. But it could be that research has implications for policy, for strategy, for example, for the way in which we practice in the workplace. So some guiding prompts could be, how can my research challenge existing power structures and inequalities, contributing to social justice and positive change in practice or policy? What methodological adaptations are needed to guarantee inclusion, accessibility, and contextual relevance? And what I mean by that is, some people might be confused, like, what do you mean methodological adaptation? It could be that you are working with linguistic minorities, for example, where English is not the best or they don't have a high proficiency in English. It could be that maybe focus groups or individual interviews or questionnaires aren't appropriate to understanding the phenomena that they're experiencing. It could be more creative, art-based approaches to methods that are more suited and appropriate for these communities. But also, how can I build mechanisms for accountability and long-term impact beyond the life of the project? So it's not just I've done the project and that's it. How can we give it legs and longevity, sustainability? Okay, now this is where I'm hoping we have some time to do a task here. So bearing in mind the material that you had before, so the ACT model and the dimensions, in this activity, you would work in breakout groups to analyze a research case study using the ACT model as your guiding framework. Your goal is to assess how effectively cultural competency has been embedded within the research process. So this activity links to a case study that I sent you that deals with mental health. So everyone should have access to that. But I also have the slide here just in case you don't. We'll want you to critically examine the research scenario through the dimensions of the ACT model, discuss how cultural considerations were integrated into the overall research design, such as, are there any research questions? What is the research problem? What type of methodology was used? What about the recruitment? Is that culturally appropriate, etc.? Identify areas of strength in the approach, as well as any gaps or missed opportunities for improvement. So I am going to put you into breakout rooms now. So you've got the ACT model, you've got the case study. You can use that model for your own research projects because it's a framework for you to start thinking about for your own projects. If you don't have the framework, please reach out so that we can send you the material. Do you have any additional questions or any questions at all for me? Yes, David.
Hi, sorry, just wondering if you could recommend any particular additional training courses around this which might be useful for sort of prospective applicants to undertake.
Oh, most definitely. Okay. I would want to take Emily, we have our participants' emails, right?
Yeah, so we can send some
Okay.
follow-up. Should we send that in the follow-up email with
Yes.
like the slides? We'll send also the links to the specific training. I think this
Yes.
is also something that the Centre for Translational Medicine and KCATO will be looking at about if specific research. We realize this has been a really short introduction and it's not done the topic justice. So if it's also something internally that we are looking at for further training. So if that's helpful. But yes, Edward's got some thoughts and we will make sure that those are all passed on. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. We are coming to an end unless we have more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been very insightful. And then we'll be in touch to get more materials.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. And if I think there might be feedback as well, if there's any particular areas or ways of applying this work to your own research or different areas of training, do let us know so we can keep developing what's most useful for everyone. But yeah. We have come to 4 minutes past 1. If there's the KCATO team, Nora and Laura, myself from the CTM and Edward are available to stay on till 1:15 if you had any other questions, either about cultural competency or KCATO or the CTM. We're happy to stay on and ask questions. If you don't have anything else in particular, we will let you get on to your lunch, hopefully, if you haven't been able to eat during the call. But yeah, I just really wanted to thank Edward for his time and energy in putting this together. We're getting lots of, really useful comments and thanks back from everyone who've taken part. So yeah, do keep in touch and we'll hopefully, see you all again soon.